with the earth. Due to the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you do not find water, then perform tayammum with pure earth. And he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's words, the soil is purifying for the Muslim, even if it is for 10 Hajj, so long as he does
10 years. Hijjat here means years.
Okay, in 10 years, so long as he does not find water.
Good.
And the meals are mild, it is a choice in the amount.
Al-Mukhtar is the preferred.
Preferred.
The preferred opinion.
Preferred in the amount.
Regarding
the because difficulty follows.
So miqdar here means measurement. Regarding the measurement distance.
Without and if he finds water, except that he is ill and he fears that if he uses the water, fights the water, and that get this.
Allows.
This allows tayammum and this is preferred, and there is no difference between.
فَهَذَا أَوْلَى, then this is more deserving or preferred.
And there is no difference between his illness increasing due to moving or due to use of the water. And it is considered by Imam Shafi'i the fear of injury, and he is returning to the apparent of the text.
Okay.
And if a person in major ritual impurity fears that if he washes, performs ghusl, then the coldness will kill him or make him ill, then he performs tayammum with earth, and this is when he has exited the city due to what we have explained. And even if he is in the city, then like that also, according to Imam Abu Hanifa, as opposed to them two, they say that indeed the actuality of this state,
the occurrence
of this state is rare in the city, so it is not considered. And he says that the inability of the weakness is established in reality, so there is no problem with considering it.
Okay, good. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bab at-Tayammum. So Tayammum is from the word Ya Mim Mim, which means to intend. Wala amin al-Bayt al-Haram. Allah says in Surah Ma'idah, and know those who are intending the Bayt al-Haram. Amma ya ummu, to intend something. Yaqsudu, qasada yaqsudu. So Tayammum has this meaning inside of it. And Tayammum is what we call dry ablution. So the Quran talks about this in two places, in Surah Nisa and in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And the first thing you have to understand, you have to understand the ayah. Allah says that in kuntum marda, if you're ill, or ala safari, or if you're on a journey, or jaa ahadu minkum al-gha'it, one of you goes to the toilet, or lamastumun nisa, or one of you has intimacy with women, falam tajidu ma'an, and you don't find water, fatayammamu, then do tayammum, sa'idan tayyiban, with pure earth, and wipe it on your face and your hands. Famsahu bi wujuhikum wa aydikum. You wipe on your face and your hands. Now look, the first thing over here is this. When Allah says about tayammum, Allah says, Lam tajidu ma'an. Lam tajidu ma'an. So the question now comes, is that when we talk about you don't find water, is there ever going to be a condition, normally, that there won't be water on earth? Is there? Or is there, yeah? Time's going to come, you like conspiracy theorists. Time's going to come when there's no water left on earth. Yeah, like Mad Max kind of scenario. So look, what's Allah talking about then? There will be a water on earth. Three-fifths of the earth is water. So if Allah says you won't find water, He obviously means there that within a certain capacity, within a certain radius, within a certain distance. Yeah, because he He obviously is not saying you're not going to find water, because if you travel anywhere on earth, you will come across water. So it's obvious to come. So this is why we take into the consideration the ruling of haraj, difficulty, burden, hardship. Everyone understand that? Okay. So first of all, according to the scholars, everyone agrees, if you're on a safar, if you're on a journey, and you can't find water, you're allowed to do tayammum. Or, if you're outside the city, you're not on a journey. Remember, a journey is a distance that you intend to cover of more than 48 miles from your home, from your city. So, if you intend to travel 48 miles, which is the distance of what is known as 3 أيام ولياليها, 72 hours on a journey, and this distance that has been designated as 48 miles, it's not from 72 hours of consecutive walking or traveling, no. It's actually only about 6 to 8 hours a day traveling. They used to travel from Fajr till Zuhr, and then they would rest until the next day. Travel from Fajr till Zuhr, rest next day. So they worked that out to roughly come to about 48 miles. Yeah, with other hadith as well. You understand? Yeah, so this is basically the distance. So if you intend to travel from Birmingham to, let's say, just beyond Leicester, or just beyond Nottingham, then you've intended to travel for more than 48 miles. So now you come under the ruling of Musafir, and hence you can't find water on the journey, then you're allowed to do tayammum. Or number two, you're working outside of Birmingham, just outside of Birmingham. Maybe you're working Walsall or somewhere else, and between you and the city is a distance. Yeah, so you're outside the city. So remember we said haraj, difficulty. What would you consider to be difficult for you if your salah time came and you had to go and do wudu? What distance would you consider to be burdensome, like make it life difficult for you? What distance? So let's say, for example, you're here. How far are you willing to travel after which you'd find it a burden to get water? From here to where? Come on. From here to where? So you're here, water in the sofa is not working. Yeah, the houses around are not working as well. Huh? You ready to travel a mile, yeah? Huh?
My car, yeah.
No, you got no car.
Say half an hour.
Half an hour, yeah? Okay. About half an hour walking, yeah? So this is why the scholars differed in what's the distance. What's the distance? Now normally in a city, if you're outside of a city, let's say in the countryside, normally in the city you have water. It's very rare in a whole city people don't have water. So people in the city normally have water. So if you're outside of a city, the scholars have differed. What's the distance? Some say the distance of a stone's throw. Yeah, so if the distance you throw a stone. Some say no, the distance of 5 miles. Some say no. So they found that 1 mile is suitable, because after that people generally find it difficult. Like me and you might not find it difficult because we're strong, but maybe a woman will find it difficult. Yeah, a young person might find it difficult. An elderly person might find it difficult. So the Sharia has given this distance. But what is the distance? So the Mujtahideen, they've come out with this 1 mile. Nowhere in the Quran does it say 1 mile. Nowhere in the Hadith does it say 1 mile. The Quran just says you can't find water. Does that make sense? So this is why when you're learning fiqh, you have to remember this. There is a legal law, a legal ruling, and there is a fiqh ruling. The legal ruling, which we call the Sharia has this scope, in acting upon it. And then the faqih, the jurist, is the one who interprets that Sharia into what he sees for acting upon. Does that make sense? Yeah, so like I said to you, for example, like a person who is going on a journey. So this going on a journey, this is something which is difficult, hard for people. So when you're going on a journey, the ruling of salat decreases to 2 salats. But this issue of when will the salat decrease, at what point in the journey? Does that make sense? So the Sharia hasn't mentioned exactly the details of it, but the Mujtahideen have figured it out. And they've come out with their research and said, okay, we believe it's this particular distance. If you intend to travel, then you start doing your qasr. So likewise in these kind of masail. So this is why the Sharia is infallible. There can be no mistake in the Sharia. What can be fallible is the mujtahid's ijtihad. So the mujtahid's ijtihad that he does can be a mistake, can be wrong. But because that's the only thing that we have, he's the most expert person, we take his opinion. Like a car. If your car is broken down and you find the most expert mechanic and he tries to fix your car and he does his best job, you're going to rely upon him because there's no one else to go to. You can't do it yourself. So this is why the ijtihad of the mujtahid is necessary upon you. Does that make sense? If someone might say to you, if 1 mile is not the distance that the Sharia has set, then why is it that I have to follow 1 mile? Because we say, because the expert, the one who is the expert, he has discovered this. If you become an expert and you can find a better answer, that's fine. Find it. Makes sense? So, من لم يجد ماء وهو مسافر أو خارج المصر وبينه وبين المصر نحو ميل أو أكثر, between him and between the city is the distance of 1 mile, يتيمم بالصعيد, he should do tayammum or is allowed to do tayammum with earth. لقوله تعالى فلم تجدوا ماء, you can't find water, فتيمموا صعيدا طيبا. وقوله عليه السلام التراب طهور المسلم, the turab is the tahur, the fatha. Yeah, tuhur is purity and tahur is a purification. The earth is a purification for a Muslim, walau ila 10 hijaj, even if it's up to 10 years. Meaning, let's say for 10 years, and it happens to some people who live in the sub-Saharan desert, yeah, or in the places out there which are very arid, hot climates where water is very scarce. For these people, they usually do tayammum, because if they were to use the water, they wouldn't have anything to drink. So some of them for months they do. So he says, walau ila 10 hijaj, even if it's up to 10 years. So even if it's up to 10 years, we say that this 10 years, this is not mafhum al-mukhalafa, okay? Meaning if someone says, oh, so up to 10 years you're allowed to use it, but let's say beyond 10 years and 1 day, you can't use it. No, we don't take that. Does that make sense? So this is a very important point to understand, that according to the Hanafi usul, we don't follow mafhum al-mukhalafa. What is mafhum al-mukhalafa? I'm going to tell you this before. If I say to you, do not eat your food in class, the mafhum al-mukhalafa, that would be, eat your food outside. Yeah. Or if I say to you, don't walk in the class with shoes on. Where can you walk with shoes on? Outside the class. Mafhum al-mukhalafa. So we say when the Sharia says something, we don't always necessarily take the mafhum mukhalafa meaning of that, because mafhum mukhalafa is only used when you know what the person's intending on the other side. Like for example, a teacher might say this to you, don't walk in the class with your shoes on. It doesn't mean walk with your shoes on outside. He's just saying that because the context is class. Make sense? However, the Hanafis say that mafhumul mukhalafa is used when it comes to fiqhi texts. So when it comes to fiqhi texts, you're allowed to use mafhum mukhalafa. Just like, for instance, like I mentioned to you before. For example, when it comes to a person, blood coming out of a person. Yeah. So what did we say before? We said if it's kharij, if it comes out on its own, then it breaks your wudu. But if it's squeezed out of your body, it does not break your wudu. Likewise, when we talked about the water coming out from fruit, we said we're not allowed to use water that comes out from fruit to do wudu. But if it's mukhraj, or if the water drips out from the grapes on its own, then you're allowed to. Does that make sense? So we look at the mafhum mukhalafa when it comes to the fiqhi texts. So fiqhi texts are designed in such a way, they are written precisely, exactly. So when the faqih is writing the books of fiqh, in his mind he's trying to devise a sentence in such a way that if you were to take the mafhum al-mukhalafa, that's also something that he's intending. Okay, so anyway, okay, now this issue of the mile, like I said to you, wal-mil huwa al-mukhtar fil miqdar. Imam Hidayah says that this distance of 1 mile, although the Sharia doesn't say it, this has been an opinion which is preferred opinion. This is the opinion that's chosen. Why is this? Because he says لأنه يلحقه الحرج بدخول مصر. Because 1 mile is considered sufficient normally, that if you have to always travel 1 mile to do wudu for salat, that's something that's considered to be burdensome. Remember I told you before, in Islam, Allah does not burden people more than they can take. He will not burden someone more than they can take. You understand? Sometimes some people, they deliberately want to act upon the strict rulings in Islam because they feel as though they get more reward for acting on the strict ruling. Yeah, which isn't the case. Yeah, for example, like, you know, if someone can't find water to do wudu, and they say no, I'm not going to act upon the 1 mile. I'm not going to act upon the 1 mile. I'm going to travel as far as I can to find water. Then all they're doing is making life difficult for themselves. Yeah. Okay. So, لأنه يلحقه الحرج بدخول مصر, because this brings different. Now, see, the problem with this is what? If you talk about haraj, difficulty is a relative issue. Each and every single one of us finds difficulty at different levels. Yeah, someone might say, I find it difficult to get up for Fajr in the morning. Does that mean that Allah doesn't burden a person more than they can take, so Fajr drops from me? No, it doesn't. However, this can happen, is that if a person goes to sleep and they can't help getting up early in the morning, they can't get up early in the morning, find it very difficult. Their body does not used to getting up early in the morning, and they miss, then that will be something which the Sharia will forgive him for. Make sense? Okay. وَالْمَاءُ مَعْدُوقِنَا. Now look at this. Now the question comes, you know, when you say, like I said in the beginning, لَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً, there will always be water on earth. When this ayah was revealed, there was water on earth. So technically, water is still there, isn't it? Yeah, water is still on earth. So what do we mean that you can't find water? So he says, وَالْمَاءُ مَعْدُومٌ حَقِيقَةً. In other words, within the distance of 1 mile, حَقِيقَةً, for this particular individual, there is no water. So you're standing over here, let's say, and you've mapped out in your head distance of 1 mile radius around you. Right? For you tried your best to locate water and you can't find it. There might be water hidden somewhere, in someone's boot of someone's car, maybe in some pipe somewhere you can't get to. So for you, al-ma'u ma'dumun haqiqatan, water is absent in reality. In reality means what? For you, within 1 mile. Not in the world, because it's not absent. Okay. Now, wal-mu'tabaru. Now, according to some Hanafis, Imam Zufar for example, he says this. He says that if a person, let's say, has only 5 minutes left before his Asr finishes, he's got 5 minutes left before Maghrib starts or sunset, he's allowed to do Tayammum if he knows that if he was to go to get water, that water's up the road, but by the time he walks there to get the water and he prays his Salat, Maghrib would have started. So he says that you're allowed to do Tayammum if you fear that the Salat time will expire. So the rest of the Hanafis say no. This is why he says, wal mu'tabaru, what's considered? Al masafatu, the distance. In other words, what's the distance? 1 mile. Duna khawfil fawt, not the fear of missing Salat. Not the fear of missing what? Salat. This is, have you noticed here? Al khawf. Yeah. I said missing what? Salat. How do I know that's Salat? How do I know? So this is what we call in usul iqtida'un nas. Iqtida'un nas is when a text has words missing from it. And the only thing that tahara would miss is what? Salat. When you're talking about tahara, what comes to your mind? Salat does. So duna khawf al-fawt, not the fear of missing a salat. So this is why we don't take Imam Zufar's opinion here. His opinion is not taken here. The other Hanafi's opinion is taken, which is the distance. So let's say 5 minutes left for Maghrib. 5 minutes left for Maghrib. What do? So if there's 5 minutes left for Maghrib and you know you can't, the water is just up the road, less than 1 mile away. Yeah. What do? Do you pray your Salat or do you go to do wudu and miss your Asr? Yeah, you miss your Asr. Do your wudu, pray your Asr even after Maghrib starts, it's fine. Because legally you have an excuse. Does that make sense? Legally you have an excuse. Okay. So لأن التفريط يأتي من قبله. So look at this. The reason we don't take this concept of Imam Zufar, that missing the salat is more important, or praying the salat is more important than going for the water, is because we say, why did he delay the salat all the way till 5 minutes? Whose fault was that? It's his fault. لأن التفريط, because the falling short, the shortcoming, يأتي من قبله, came from his behalf, the man's behalf. Does that make sense? So remember, the Sharia does not burden a person. Right? The Sharia does not burden a person. But if a person deliberately makes something difficult upon himself, that's his fault. Yeah, that's his fault if a person does that. Like for example, look, let's say there's a person, he's fasting in Ramadan, and he deliberately sits out in the sun. He could have sat in the shade. Now can we say, oh, he's sitting out in the sun, now he can break his fast? No, because he is doing that out of his own action. That's something that he's doing out of his own action, that is. So the Sharia, he could have sat inside. So anyway, at-tafrit. So this is what is the tafrit. Yeah, this is the tafrit. Okay. وَلَوْ كَانَ يَجْدَ. Okay, now next. So the first one we talked about, the distance. So he has to be a traveler or outside the city. That's one type of person that qualifies to do tayammum. There's also another person that qualifies to do tayammum, like the ayah I recited to you in the beginning, which mentioned the ill person. So he says, وَلَوْ كَانَ يَجِدُ الْمَاءِ إِلَّا أَنَّهُ مَرِيض, except that he's ill. Now the next question comes up, which is, how do you define an ill person? Like for example, someone might say to you, I'm ill, I've got a headache. I'm ill, I've got a cold. I'm ill, I've got some terminal illness. So what kind of an illness, marad, is considered to be a marad? So this is something the fuqaha to look into as well. So what kind of illness would be mu'tabar here? Huh?
Someone who's bedbound. Someone who's bedbound can't get up.
Okay, that's one type. Someone who's bedbound or
can't use water.
Or who can't use water. Huh? What else?
Make it worse.
Make it worse as well. Yeah, make it worse. So this is why this issue of illness, when we say illness, this is like a big concept. Illness is a big concept. Yeah, a big concept. So that's why under here comes all those people, if they were to move, it would harm them. So there might be a person who's, the doctor has said he's got to sit down in one place, or he's got to lie down. Or there could be a person who has a skin problem, and if they put water onto it, it's going to burn their skin. Yeah, irritate their skin. So this is what is known as a person who is really ill. Then the fuqaha ask this question: what if there's a person who's not ill? It's a cold day. You wake up for Fajr in the morning, and the water is ice cold. You're not ill. Can that person do tayammum? He's not ill though. Water's there. What would you say?
If he fears that the water will harm him, it's going to make him ill.
Yeah. Okay. So again, leading to illness, the fuqaha said. Yeah. So this is why he says, "Marid yakhafu in ista'mal ma ishtadda maraduhu." The ill person who fears if he was to use water, his marad would increase. And like I said to you, even according to the Hanafis, a person who's not ill but fears by using water they'll become ill. Make sense?
Would that fear have to be based on something?
It's just ghalibul dhan. If you most likely feel, if I use this water, I'm going to get ill, that would be sufficient. Okay, why is this? Lima talawna. Lima talawna means because of the verse that we recited. What's the verse that we recited? Meaning? The ayah of tayammum, yeah? إن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر. ولأن الضرر في زيادة المرض, and because ضرر is فوق الضرر في زيادة. Now let me explain something to you before I explain this. According to fiqh, remember I told you before, if you want to understand Hidayah, you need to understand, or even generally any fiqh, whether it's the Hanafi fiqh or Maliki fiqh or Shafi fiqh, whatever, you need to be able to already understand all the masail of fiqh. Because what they tend to do is they'll explain a masla and then they'll do qiyas of that masla onto another masla into another chapter. So you need to understand that, in order for you to understand this. So it's a bit of like a paradox really. To understand fiqh, you need to already understand fiqh. So okay, how does this work? According to Hanafi fiqh, there's this masla. Let's say you've gone to the countryside. Yeah, you've gone there and it's a desert area. And there's this guy who's got this mobile van and he's selling ice cream and things, and he's selling water as well. So he's selling a bottle of water. What do? Salat time comes, you need to do wudu. Can you do tayammum, or do you have to buy the water off him? What would you say?
Buy the water.
Buy the water, yeah? Because according to the Quran, you can find water, isn't it? Yeah, there's no illness, there's no fear, nothing. However, the fuqaha raise this question. See how deep the fuqaha look into this. Although the Quran, although the Sunnah does not mention this masala, the fuqaha open up things. Now let me explain something to you before you go ahead. You know, when we look at ayat of the Quran or we look at a hadith, what we have to understand is this ayah, although it talks about like 2 or 3 scenarios, in reality the fuqaha are trying to get their heads around the background of this ayah. What's the purpose of this ayah? What's the aims and objectives? What are the illas? What are the causes for this ruling? Or for example, let's say there's a hadith. When we look at hadith, in reality, what the faqih sees is that this hadith is actually one piece in a jigsaw puzzle that has maybe over 100 pieces in it. Have you got that? So this is why when we look at it, we think to ourselves, like the example I gave before, of having trousers below your ankles. So this is a clear hadith that says any trousers, ma asfala min izar, ma asfala min ka'bin min izar, fa fin nar. If you take that hadith literally, you're trying to say this, that the Prophet ﷺ said this hadith to every single man and woman. He said this to everyone around the world. He said this from them all till Day of Judgment, and anyone, yeah, about anyone. So the problem with that is this is literalism. So when you're being a literalist, a zahiri, and you're taking one text and you're superimposing onto everything, that's not what the fuqaha were looking for. The fuqaha knew that this one hadith is actually a piece in the big puzzle, and they're trying to figure out what the rest of the pieces are in the puzzle. So they say, okay, this actual hadith is not to do with everyone, it's actually men only. And then it's only to do with those people who have pride and arrogance inside them, who are deliberately doing this to show off. Does that make sense? So likewise over here, when you look at any ayah, any hadith, the faqih, he doesn't just look at what the text is saying, he actually goes on the underlying issues, he raises them. So for example, someone can ask this issue I've told you. You go there, do you have to buy that bottle of water or not? So if someone takes the literal meaning of what the Quran says, can he do tayammum? No, he can't. But you see, what they question was this: what's the purpose of tayammum? What's the purpose? Ease, isn't it? Haraj, to remove haraj. So therefore, if the guy is selling water and that water is being sold at extortion rates, one bottle of water is selling it for £20, for example, and £20 is, difficult for people to give for one bottle of water. It's not fair. Okay, if it's £2, £3, maybe acceptable. But to £20, you're not willing to give £20 for water. So here the fuqaha say that the person does not have to buy the water. He can actually do tayammum. Does that make sense? So you see how deep they look into this masala. So likewise, when you have masail today, that's the same kind of principles that have to be used as well in these kind of issues. And it's used on fiqhi texts. Yeah, the fuqaha use this on fiqhi texts. Like for example, recently we had this issue with, regarding adoption and the concept of, if you adopt, like foster a child in this country, if it's a Christian child, you have to take it to the church if he wants to go to church. If he wants to eat pork, you have to provide pork for it. Yeah, etc., etc. That by law you have to do that. Yeah, this is the rules of fostering. You can't even tell your religion to the child. You can't invite it to your religion. So this obviously raised the question now. As for a Muslim, is he allowed to buy pork? And then, is he allowed to take someone to the place of worship of another person? Does this come under ta'awun alal ithmi wal udwan? You see that? So this is why the fuqaha have to look in the issues in more detail. Like what is the scope in Islam for these kind of masail? Do we just look at the zahir text and take whatever is there? Or do we kind of like what he's done over here? He's thought out the box and asked about things which make sense. So this is why when fiqh is a very deep topic, it requires lots and lots of thought. So here he compares this now. So once we've understood this masla of the water, bottle of water, if it's being sold at extortion rates, you can do tayammum. So likewise, if that's the case with wealth, that should also be the case with the fear of an increase in illness, because they're both haraj, aren't they? They're both difficulty. Yeah, having to pay £20 for one bottle of water is burdensome. Likewise, having to do wudu with cold water, which you fear is going to make you ill. So it says, لأن الضرر في زيادة المرض, the discomfort or the pain that's due to excessive illness or increasing of illness, فوق الضرر, is actually more. Yeah, it's more, it's higher. Because remember, your health is more important to you than your wealth. Makes it, your wealth is not important to you compared to your health, but your health is. So this is why he says في زيادة ثمن الماء. So in other words, وذلك يبيح التيمم, that masala of being allowed to perform tayammum if the water is too high in rate, if that allows you to do tayammum, فهذا أولى, then هذا meaning the fear of increase of illness is more deserving for you to do tayammum. Make sense? Okay, next. So next, like I said, the question the fuqaha raises this is that, let's say there's a person who fears that their illness will increase by them using the water. It's cold, freezing cold. What if there's a person who's not ill at all, but let's say they've broken their limbs, yeah, they've broken their spine or their pelvis or some part of their body, and if they were to go to do tayammum or wudu, the movements of the wudu, going to the toilet, having to do it like that, would give them problems in that illness which is not related to water, but it's related to other parts of the body. So he says, لا فرق, there's no difference. أن يشتد مرضه, that his illness increases بالتحرك, by movement, أو بالاستعمال, they're both the same. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Next. Now look, Imam Shafi rahimahullah, he has this rule. He says, illness, he defines the threshold for illness. He defines it as the fear of losing a limb. The fear of losing a limb. Anything less than losing a limb, you can't do tayammum. Yeah, so that's why according to the Shafis then, if you wake up in the morning and the water is cold and you fear you're going to get a cold, you can't do tayammum. You can only do tayammum if you fear, if you were to use this, the water is like, sub-zero temperature. If you use that, it's going to freeze your arm and it's going to fall off, like, liquid nitrogen. Make sense? So his position is quite strict. وَاعْتَبَرَ الشَّافِعِي رَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ خَوْفَ التَّلَفِ, yeah, the fear of talaf. And remember, we used to have in madrasa, we used to sometimes we used to be ill, so we couldn't do wudu, so we used to do tayammum. And unfortunately, the Shafi guys, we used to say to them, stick to your fiqh, guys. Why do you guys take Hanafi fiqh? Yeah, you guys not allowed to do tayammum, do wudu. So this is why khawf al-talaf وَهُوَ مَرْدُودٌ بِظَاهِرِ النَّص. And Imam Hidayah responds to the Shafi position and says, this Shafi position is mardud, is rejected, just by looking at the apparent text. What's the apparent text? Kuntum marda. Yeah, marda. So illness, there's no qaid there. Makes sense? There's no qaid. The illness is what we call in usul mutlaq. Al-marad al-mutlaq. It's not muqayyad. It's not in kuntum marda wa takhafuna an yahlik udwun minkum. Yeah, that's not there. Okay, anyway. Everyone got that? Okay, next. The next masla is this, which obviously I did mention just recently, just now, but again, we'll look into more detail. There's a person who's not ill, and he fears that if he was to do wudu, yeah, or take a bath, either he's going to die, so cold, and it can happen to the body, pneumonia and cold weather, or it will make him ill. Is he allowed to tayammum? So we said yes. وَلَوْ خَافَ الْجُنُوبِ إِنْ اغْتَسَلَ أَنْ يَقْتُلَهُ الْبَرْدُ. If a junub person who is in the state of major impurity, was to do ghusl, and يقتله البرد, that the bird will kill him, أو يمرضه, or it will make him ill. Yeah, or it will make him ill. يتيمم بالصعيد. This person is also allowed to do tayammum. Whether he's a resident in his own house, whether he's on a journey, doesn't matter. Like for example, once I remember, we were on a train in Pakistan, me and my friend. So what happened was, at night time, we had ihtilam, nocturnal emission. It was a night train. So I went to sleep, knocked out. When I woke up, I realized I needed to do ghusl. So I went to the toilet, and it was an AC cabin. And when I put the water in, the water was freezing cold. It was winter. Yeah, so I was thinking to myself, okay, if I take a bath now, I'm gonna definitely get really ill, and I'm on a journey, and it's not good. So then what I thought to myself was, okay, I'll do tayammum. Yeah, so I searched for some dust. Yeah, I did tayammum, and I came back. My friend, he went, and after a while he came back, and then I said to him, go on, you lead. He goes, no, you lead. I go, no, you lead. He's a hafiz. I'm not a hafiz. So then he goes to me, you know what? He goes, I've actually done tayammum. I need a ghusl. I go, me as well. So I led or he led. Someone led. So okay. وَهَذَا إِذَا كَانَ خَارِجَ الْمِصْرِ. Now look, there's an ikhtilaf. I said to you whether it's in the city, isn't it? I'm talking about the Imam Abu Hanifa's position. The Sahibain don't agree with Imam Abu Hanifa on this. The Sahibain say, you're only allowed to do this if you're outside of the city. Yeah, and the reason for that is because they say two things. Look, number one, this kind of a condition, like look, it happened to me, isn't it? Is that a common scenario for people? It's not common. It's a very rare scenario. It's a very rare scenario for that to happen. So Sharia, the fiqhi laws are not based upon the rare and nadir masail. Because there's lots of things in the world that happen really extremely rare case. Yeah, like today, remember last time I was telling you guys about the mule. And I said to you that the mule that actually comes from when a female horse and a male donkey, they mate. Yeah, that's when you get a mule. And the mule is actually infertile. It's actually infertile. But today there's a documentary on, and it was showing that they actually found very rare cases of a genetic change in certain mules. They can give birth now. Very rare. It's happened in the world. Only 2 or 3 cases they found. So on rare cases, you don't base fiqh masail on rare cases. Fiqh masail are based on things that affect the masses. So this is why the Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad say, no, this is not going to be something that's going to affect everyone. So that's why you can't do it unless you're outside the city. And number 2, if you're at home, right, and water's cold, what do? You warm it up, simple as that. You got boilers normally. Or if you don't have a boiler, you just got the gas, you heat it up. So that's why they say this. So look, هذا إذا كان خارج المصر لما بينا, because of what we said earlier. Yeah, because of what we said earlier, meaning that the ruling in the beginning, من لم يجد الماء وهو مسافر أو خارج المصر. ولو كان في المصر, if however a person is in the city, فكذلك عند أبي حنيفة. Imam Hanifa says the ruling is the same. In other words, whether you're in the city at home or whether you're outside the city, you're allowed to do tayammum. خلافا لهما, as opposed to the Sahibain. هما يقولان إن تحقق هذه الحالة. This scenario occurring, the occurrence of this condition, في المصر is extremely rare. نادر في المصر. Nadir. And fiqhi rulings are not based upon nadir masail. They're based upon issues that affect the masses. فلا يعتبر. فلا يعتبر means that this is not considered. For example, like, in fiqh, there's an issue which is to do with water going down your throat. Yeah. So in when you're fasting, if water goes down your throat, what happens? Your fast breaks, isn't it? But let's say someone says to you, when I do wudu and I put water in my mouth, water might go down my throat. How common is it in Ramadan, a person puts water in their mouth and water goes down the throat? How common is it? Very rare, isn't it? It's not common. So because it's not common, we can't put a ruling on that and say that's excused. That's why the Hanafi say if you put water in your mouth and you're fasting and you're doing wudu, it goes down your throat, your fast will break. But accidentally going to the fridge and picking something up and eating it, how common is that? Very common. It's more common than the first. So that's why over there you're forgiven there. Your fast is fine. Okay, فَلَا يُعْتَبَرْ. Now Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he says this. وَلَهُ أَنَّ الْعَجْزِ. So look, you know when we're talking about the لَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً. If you can't find water, technically you call this person incapable. He's known as an ajiz. Yeah? Ajiz or ijz haqiqi is called. Like for example, let's say I'm in a desert, I can't find water. I am known as being ajiz haqiqatan an tayammum. Literally, I can't do tayammum. Sorry, not tayammum. Ajiz an wudu. I literally cannot do wudu. Make sense? So the fiqhi ruling here, ajiz, applies. Because Imam Hanifa says, whether that person is outside the city, if he's outside the city and he fears that if he uses the water he'll die, isn't he as well ajiz of using water? Isn't he also incapable of using water? So likewise, if he's going to fear of death or illness outside the city, the same fear can occur at home. For example, like at home as well, like I told you guys, in the places that we live in. Let's say, for example, someone's got their whole system in their house working electricity, and electricity don't work. Yeah, the electricity card expires, and it's not going to heat up water. And a person wants to do wudu, they'll die or they become extremely ill. Yeah, what do you do? So this is why he says, أن العجز ثابت حقيقة. Over here, it's ثابت حقيقة as well. Whether you're outside the city or whether you're inside the city. فلا بد من اعتباره. Does that make sense? In other words, we don't look at rare cases. What we look at is incapability. Are you capable of using water? Yes or no? So he says, no, he's not, because he'll get ill. Everyone understand what that means? Okay, go on.
والتيمم ضربتان يمسح بإحداهما